horizontal, flat, ESC, now you know it's flat, below ground, measured, flat.
Bill, you know, I could hear that McCoon retard saying something like that. Just the way you said it. I about threw up, man. Thank you. I hate it.
That's verbatim, probably. He could just come in and say Nathan's a liar, and they'll believe it until he gets caught lying and Buck freaking solidifies it. That was epic, man. Causing him a lot of pain, a lot of problems. Now it's boycott Nathan totally.
Yeah, that's a mad reaction, isn't it? He gets caught out lying, and if he'd just shut his mouth, everyone would have just forgotten about it. But instead, he's moaned and bleated about being caught out in a lie, tried to address the person that's caught him in the lie and get him to toe the line with the lie. And now, as a reaction to that, being talked up by us, that is to say, well, people have obviously reacted to you lying because they recognise it's really overt. And ha ha ha, you've been caught out lying, not by me, but by your compadre Buck here. What's the result? I think we should boycott Nathan. Just hilarious, the reactions.
They're going to end up eating
Nathan, what you should do to David Wise is, now that you don't bring no one here to debate with me, to give me the Bitcoin, here's a book that you can read and get up to date with the Flat Earth debate.
I mean, I'd hope there was someone semi-friendly, that's to say, someone on the similar side to me like Dave Weiss that does hopefully read the book and actually reference it and talk about it. That'd be wonderful. You know, that would go a long way to mending bridges where people like Dave have stabbed me in the back. Oh, right, we don't talk about Nathan Oakley. What, the guy defending your Bitcoin? Oh, you don't, do you scumbag? Like, yeah, that would mend some bridges if he actually did go out of his way to talk about the book. Whether or not he would, I have no idea. He just ignores me. So when I contact him specifically about things like this, which I've done on Skype, he just ignores me. Like, fair enough. I've bleated and moaned about him ever since he stabbed me in the back. Maybe that's a bridge that'll never get mended.
He's got that boat. He's got that boat, Nathan. He's got to get on his boat.
Yeah, that was hilarious when he was lording it over me about all the company he keeps, like Jaron. Because, of course, that worked out well. Oh, and Witsit. Yeah, that worked out well too. You know what I mean? Because he was lording it over how he'd had them on his boat that he's made with his app money.
Well, let's pick up a few things from the channel here, because I heard him describing elevation is from sea level. So he's okay in some things, but he's not up to date. No way.
As we all know, I'm behind. What's up with Whitson and Jaron? Did they go to a monastery and become nuns? I mean, what?
Jaron's wife got knocked up by his best friend, and they're divorced. Oh. And Whitson is divorced. So that sums it all up.
Oh. And Dave Weiss still on the boat?
Has Dave Weiss still got his boat? I don't know.
He's afraid to go to the horizon because it might be a really big ball.
He's still getting a lot of interviews, and with bigger and bigger people. I think it's fascinating that even though he's talked with Roseanne, he's talked with recently with Brad Lee.
Yeah, because that's who they want.
Right. And he is getting them to at least publicly on their channels kind of question flat Earth, and they definitely know that the moon landing is fake and all that stuff. So they know the Feast of Nonsense. I find it intriguing that even though these videos, I think Brad Lee had him on twice recently, thousands and thousands of interactions and comments, and of course all the trolls with it and stuff like that. But
he is the buffer. He's the buffer, though.
He is.
He's the buffer they need between us and them. They need that idiot flat earther that they can interview. They'll say ignorant shit. They need him. So yeah.
Yes, because they're still trying to debunk the ball. We're done with that ages ago. We are proving flat Earth, not debunking the ball. This is how it doesn't work on the ball. Excuse me. What is the proof for the flat Earth?
Exactly. So
it's
Dave
right
Weiss
there. They're talking about it, but he's not saying this is proof of flat Earth. It does in some things, like I said, altitude or elevation. Yeah, but he skips, he passes, it just goes way above his head.
He's a stereotypical anti-baller, but he also meets the nice stereotypical, what I call fart-sniffing conspiratard flat earther as well, doesn't he? With his directed energy weapons and his 9/11 truth. You know, that's him. He typifies your average fart-sniffing conspiratard that's come to the subject of flat Earth and then gets a vague idea of how to debunk heliocentrism while simultaneously whistling past every single flat Earth prerequisite measurement ever. So when you say they want him, what you mean is they want the PSYOP stereotype that's been engineered below the level of dweeb. The dweebs we oppose need someone below them, and our conspiratard is below them in the pecking order socially. If you can label that person flat earther, they sink one step lower, which encourages your average dweeb to mock them from a position of mild superiority in terms of the knowledge that they have, because they've invested in something that most people find cognitively expensive. Well, Dave fits in beautifully. He's a conspiratard, he likes talking about 9/11 and Sandy Hook, and he's got a vague idea how Earth's not a ball, but not enough that he can say, well, to be a ball to say it isn't requires flat Earth measurement. He's not at that stage. So he's a nice, soft, easy target. He's also money motivated, so his main priority is plugging his app. So he's trying to strive through his rhetoric to get to his app, and that's the main priority. So being a bit mercenary means he's got an agenda that isn't necessarily in line with knowing for sure and without a doubt Earth is flat, or Jesse Peterson wouldn't have got the better of him. So he is a soft target. Now, if he was to read my book and actually take it on board, yeah, he'd be an absolute nightmare for them, because he's reasonably well received. If he suddenly had a decent rhetoric, heads would be rolling in Dave's path. But he doesn't care. As long as he's got enough rhetoric to be of note or to be able to talk for a significant amount of time while he's on these shows, that's good enough for him to get to the point where he can promote his app, and that's all he wants. So he's not there for the greater good. Now me, I'm the other direction. I'm even more apathetic to the position. Right? When I go out there, it might be I'm even more mercenary because I'll just want to talk about my book. However, the book itself is directly geared towards the subject of flat Earth measurements. So at least it's a means to an end that can be approved of for every flurf in my company, right? Because people like the contents of the book, or at least I'm getting a general idea now. It's been out for a week that I've had no objections from anybody. The worst objection I've had so far was actually one deck, when he was like, it's quite a slog getting through the Coriolis chapter. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Have you got to the bit where I disclaim that yet? And like was discussed today, it's like, once you get there, you're like, bloody hell, yeah, exactly. That's how I feel about this complicated garbage that's cognitively expensive. So other than that, that's the highest degree of critique I've got. Now, don't get me wrong. People telling me that there's a couple of spelling errors and people generally making a generalisation about it. Oh, it's just a load of old rubbish and there's no measurements in it. Well, you're like, well, that's not substantive in terms of a justification for why it's not good or the lack of measurements. That's actually patently false. But that's the opposing side who just want to say nothing to see here, basically, which is fine. You know, that's how they're going to react to it. But from people who actually value their opinion, or even the people who don't, you know, the people who brace against us, it's like, well, none of them have actually offered any worthy critiques thus far. When they have, this is spelt wrong, it's like, well, what about the measurement from sea level for the Kármán line? Well, that, you know, immediately sends them into a little spiral, because they can't then cope with the actual subject that's being addressed in the book. They just want to say, well, you're stupid, you can't spell Kármán. Or you're stupid, you spelt weather like the stuff above your head rather than whether or not. So you're definitely not credible because you've spelt something wrong. That's the best they've had. That's the only worthy critique thus far.
Well, technically, you need a flat Earth for weather anyway, above your head.
Sure, but I'm just saying the point is there's nobody's come up on the opposing side with anything substantive with regards to what could be perceived by a wider audience as a rebuttal. It's not very good. You're like, okay, well, why isn't it very good? There's been nothing that actually substantiates that.
But they can't, Nathan. That's the whole point. They can't. What are they going to say? The measurements are bullshit? Because
well, so far they've said
then.
they're non-existent. They've said that it doesn't have any measurements in it. And you're like, well, okay, well, literally on today's show, it came up about the molten iron core chapter. And you're like, okay, well, that's got azimuth and altitude being measured in it. Not only are they measured in it, they were used by my bleeding opponent. Like Rob Noxious is bringing it up. Seismology was mentioned today. You're like, oh, brilliant. That's actually detailed in the book also. Specific mention of seismology. I think, again, in the molten iron core chapter, just by chance, everything seems to follow along a nice theme. That is to say, when things come up that can be referenced to the book, they all seem to neatly sit into one chapter. Like yesterday it was the Earth Curve chapter. Today it's been the molten iron core chapter. Again, together with other chapters that are about people when it's the betrayal chapter. But what my point is, it's capable of being referenced back to a specific measurement when you talk about the molten iron core, azimuth, altitude, seismology, Coriolis effect. You know, all of these are the measurements. They're all flat, and they're all relied upon by our ball-believing brethren who are saying there's no measurements. You're like, no, all of the measurements for your religion are detailed in the book and reference back to how flat Earth must be to acquire them. And in their mind, wishful thinking, tell the audience there aren't any measurements. You're like, well, you'd demonstrate that in some capacity. You'd substantiate it. No, it's only a book about people. All there is lots of anecdotes about events that have happened with people. There aren't any measurements. Whereas when somebody suggests that, like they've done over the last couple of days, you go, well, we've just literally discussed the Earth Curve chapter, or we've just literally discussed the molten iron core chapter. X, Y, and Z are the measurements contained within X chapter. There's the measurements. And what we get is, no. You're like, well, okay, what do you mean no? Azimuth and altitude aren't in there? And the reality is, it's just wishful thinking. They wish there was no measurements in there. There are, and they're all flat.
They want the dimensions, and they're not understanding that flat is not a freaking shape.
They're going to want literal, how many miles to the ice?
Correct.
How big is your flat pizza planet? That's all I'm getting. And I'm sure that's what Elder Bev and everyone else means when they say you have no measurements. You have no Nathan Oakley 3959 to your pizza planet equator. And how far to the ice wall? That's a measurement. Tell me how tall you've measured, whatever.
Yeah, but they're not understanding the words they're using.
Sure, but this is also addressed in the book, right? So again, I think it is actually coincidentally in the molten iron core chapter when talking about the expansion of the known territories. So as no, it's actually not. It's called the offing. This chapter that I'm talking about now is in a chapter called the offing, and it describes how in recent history we've expanded the known territories. I'm explaining how, like with the Americas, there's a recent addition of land to the maps. And as they expand, obviously the territories are increasing the amount of known land masses. It goes on to detail how the people who have been moved around from pillar to post to colonise these areas are included in the gerrymandering and propaganda that's involved in expanding known territories for people of power and how they do it. Well, that justifies why I, as an individual, wouldn't know the expansion of the known territories beyond the limits that we already have on the maps. And if someone wants to say, well, how big is the current known territories, there's a good chance I could just go to Google Earth, drag an elevation profile across the known surface of Earth, and give them a rough guesstimate of how big the current territories are. But given that in our recent history they've been expanded, that seems kind of flimsy to suggest, well, that is the definitive overall value. But the overall value would just be given in miles And miles are a linear measurement of Earth's surface in the horizontal. So any mile that's ever measured ever in any capacity with reference to Earth proves it's flat.
That's correct.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. I don't care. If we don't know.
Just one second, D Rose. Sorry to interrupt you.
Huh?
Did you want to add something, Josh? Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering what the recent expansion was. You mentioned it a couple times.
Well, like the Americas. So in the last 250 years, the expansion has gone into what you call the New World. The Americas, right? Australia. These are territories that have been recently added to maps. So within our recent history, we go from having maps that don't have those lands on to lands that have them labelled as the New Worlds. Right? Have you ever heard of the Americas being labelled as the New World?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I didn't know if you were pointing towards 1500s or late 1400s as recent. That's fine.
Well, throughout that period, like literally in the last few hundred years, all you see if you look at the history of mapping, I mean, this is going back 12 years to when Martin Leitke, otherwise known as Flat Earth British, who currently covers a lot of Tartaria, started showing me this shit. And he's like taking me through the maps and showing me how they've expanded the territories. And we went right back to one of the earliest maps. Who's off mute? Called the map... Eli. Causing audio chaos, Eli.
Sorry, I don't have my headphones in.
No worries. So we went right the way back to one of the earliest, which was stretched on a piece of pigskin in one of the cathedrals here in England called the Mappa Mundi. And that's how far we went back in terms of the original territories that are shown on that map, right the way through to the present. So in a timeline, if you wanted it to be heliocentric, you'd have it be a absolutely minuscule section of the timeline for the recent expansion of Earth's territories. So in very, very recent history, new lands were found. Now we go, like was discussed on the show earlier, right? People point to the sky and go, well, when Elon Musk populates that Lite, and I, what the frickin' hell are you talking about? Never in known history have we ever expanded the territories upwards towards the frickin' sky. Every single bit of known land that's now been discovered, past tense, was discovered, present tense, in areas beyond the horizon. That's why it's in the chapter called The Offing. That's where the lands were found in recent history, beyond the horizon. The only reason we could find our way back home was because we charted the sky as we went. We increased our understanding of the navigational systems that we used with the stars so that we could find our way back home with the same processes when we went beyond the equator and the convention that we had with Polaris. That expansion is in our very recent history. And horizontal, more importantly. That's the main purpose of that chapter, to explain that every land that's ever been found ever was found horizontally.
That's correct.
It's been 500 years of the Carta Marina, where they explain all of this as well, where the maps of the world were all patched up one after the other, depending of the empires that they came from. So the English Empire provide their maps, the Spanish Empire provide theirs, and so on, so on. So there is no way of confirming the dimensions being given, because it's a compilation. The maps of the world, that is a compilation of different maps. But when it comes to navigation, the maps of the seas, they still used today, 500 years later, proving that it's flat. It's always been used as flat.
Correct.
Hey, Nathan, you know that's my favorite part of what we talk about. I love when you expound on that part. That's my favorite part. We talk about the, and I always put it in the metaphor of Star Trek. When you hear Captain Kirk, when it used to come on, he said, you remember, Neil, we used to hear it say, beyond voyages or whatever. That was literally metaphorical for the traverse beyond horizon to new worlds. They were telling you in that way, but they were also pumping the going up versus going out, expanding. It's amazing how they did this psyop. And when you look at the maps, like you said, the map of London or the maps of the 1400s, 1500s, before the discovery of the Americas, which always existed, but before the ones that were the cartographers and the ones that were the elitists that controlled the conquistador and the whole doctrine of discovery. When they so-called, quote, discovered these lands, then you see the Americans. Now, that's what you said with the linear model.
You're losing it. You're breaking up.
And I sound like okay. Never mind.
So D-Rose, what you're looking for is space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise.
Well, that's what they used to call it. Beyond the offing, beyond the horizon. That's what they used to call outer space. Outer space was horizontal and beyond the horizon. In the old books that 10th Man was showing us. That's what they used to call it. Outer space. Now outer space is the sky.
To search out new worlds and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And that's why I love when Nathan gets on there. Because, like, back to that thing as far as what is the distance between whatever point we're at, say traveling from wherever NASA is, and you travel out to go to the so-called ice wall, still, you need to rely upon a level plane of reference to get that measurement, to get that distance. It's a distance measurement. So it makes sense. And when you're navigating and you know what way is north, which way is south, you know they're going out where no one knows, out where no one knows. That's the main thing. It never says in that thing that Neil just repeated, it never says up. It says out. Everything is out, outer, not upper, outer. Expansion.
Yeah, because he just says space, the final frontier. Well, space is in front of us, too.
Thank you. The space between me and you, the space between me and my steering wheel. That's space. Anything
If there's space between us, fill it up slowly.
The space between your ears.
The irony of it is Captain Picard, isn't it? Representing August Picard, the guy who went to the upper stratosphere and seen the Earth being flat.
Are you talking about Picard from the new Star Trek?
Well, August Picard was the guy who actually did the high altitude balloon to the stratosphere and seen the Earth being flat. Same name was used for the Star Trek Enterprise.
I see what you're saying.
Well, Neil, there's a whole brand new Star Trek with a whole new captain. I mean, newer than the movie version, newer than Picard.
Yeah, I didn't get into any of those. My Star Trek was James T. Kirk. That's the only one I know.
Yep, that's where my sister got her name. My mother named her after that princess or that Queen Raina. That was one of the aliens that Captain Kirk screwed, fucked.
I'm Eddie Murphy, Captain Kirk, like fucking them scream bitches.
They were way ahead of the time, weren't they? With automatic doors, flat screen TVs, communication, wireless.
Wait. What about the flip phones? Kirk Enterprise.
My favourite is in Next Generation, the one with Picard. If you look at the what do they call it? The bridge, right? All the bridge is made up of is a huge amount of acoustic treatment. So what makes the bridge look futuristic is actually just acoustic panels on their side everywhere. Everything's covered in acoustic panels. And that's all it is. That's what makes the look. A few monitors and absolute crap ton of acoustic panels. And they've used standard sizes. So most of the time they're 2 foot by 4 foot. And if you look above all of the monitors in Next Generation, all of the panels are 2 foot by 4 foot, just next to each other, just in a big row. And it looks super cool. It looks really futuristic.
And space is flat as well, so they were also traversing a horizontal plane of reference.
With lots of buttons flicking colors and people pressing on buttons or pretending to press on buttons. Yeah, nice.
There's not even buttons not even physical buttons anymore. It's all flat screens and LEDs and LCDs, and that's it. Man, in the old days, you had to build a set with levers and buttons and lights and physical pieces of equipment and wiring. Now you just slap in an LED screen and
the detail, the earpiece with a button that you answer the call.
I can't keep us steady, Captain.
Damn it, Jim. I'm a doctor, not a scientist.
But then again, it goes back to 1960s. Yeah, when with the Jetsons, the cartoon, also very futuristic with wireless communication, FaceTime.
You know about the Jetsons?
Yeah, flat screen TVs.
Oh, no. Let me ask you a few questions. What was the father's name?
Mr. Jetson.
I know.
Well, first of all, let's hold on. Let me get this out. What was
George.
the Jetsons?
George.
It was a futuristic cartoon, right?
Yep.
Okay, what was the dog's name?
Astro.
What was the wife's name?
Oh,
Think of the song and you'll get it.
Jane, his wife.
Yes.
Oh, right.
And what was the daughter's name?
Judy.
Judy.
Yeah. Okay, what was the black guy's name?
There was a
Leroy.
black guy? Oh, God.
What'd you say about it when I said what was the black guy's name?
Leroy.
I didn't know there was a black guy. I don't know. I haven't
There
watched
wasn't.
it.
The future's looking good, isn't it?
What did you say? There was no black guy, and their joke punchline was the future's looking good.
What are you talking about? What about the guy with the big forehead, the Cleon?
Yeah, see, hold on. No, we're talking about Jetsons. That joke was told. Let me finish. That joke was told to me by a freaking hillbilly corrections officer when I was in prison. He brought me over to tell me that joke like he thought I was like. I looked at him like he had three heads. But it was kind of funny. But there was a black guy, the cop. There was a cop that was a black guy in the Jetsons.
Oh, this must be a Mandela effect. What black guy on the Jetsons?
There was a cop. I'm telling you, look at the Jetsons. You'll see one of the things is a cop riding on his little thing. I think when George was speeding.
Come on, you don't like my conspiracy. It's Mandela effect.
But what he said, because at the end of the joke is the future's looking good. It's a racist joke, but it's kind of funny.
Well, it's also at the expense of the guys who made the cartoons and the sign of the times then.
Yep.
And no one thought about it then, and no one really cared. About
the sign of the times then.
Well, the reason why I like Morgan
what
Freeman.
I've been thinking?
Go ahead, Eli.
What I've been thinking about this, the time is now. I started listing off all the things we have now that have always been, as far as literature is concerned. There's always been beggars. There's always been prostitutes. There's always been bankers. There's always been robbers. There's always been good people. There's always been murderers. Nothing's changed but the technology.
No shit.
Again, I've got to ask, what groups are you hanging around with, Eli? It is quite disturbing.
I like
what you said,
man.
Nathan.
I said, what groups are you rolling with? There's always been murderers. I'm always hanging around with these murderers. It's just commonplace. You're like, are they?
He's
Not for
saying
me.
through time. It's all the same. You could go back 600 years and there'll be prostitutes, there'll be beggars, there'll be murderers, there'll be thieves, and there'll be good people too.
There's artistic people, musicians. It's the same. It's the same. It's the same.
That's why Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, there's a whole load of these types of sayings. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. There's nothing new under the sun. All of those sorts of ideas speak to the idea that nothing much really changes.
Like fighting about politics, and I'm like, oh, the only thing you can do is really focus on your personal journey. You're not going to change what has always been.
Yeah. Because that's the end result of one thing, Eli. Everything you define is the end result of sin. That's it. When you sin, you miss the mark. And that's why you got what we have now in the world.
Oh, I love that. There's a comment from Jordan Peterson about this. And he says, he's talking to a crew of students in a lecture hall, right? And he says to them, I've never seen anybody get away with anything ever. And he says that in the moment when somebody does something evil or does something bad, they're twisting the universe. That's how he describes it, right? He says they're twisting. And he says in that moment, nothing happens. The universe doesn't flex back. It takes a while to snap back. But when it does, they suffer the consequences of their actions. And normally it comes later down the line. But when it happens to them, they're all, woe is me. Why has this happened to me? Why has God forsaken me? And then they backtrack through their timeline to the point that they were evil and they tried to distort the universe. And it's just snapped back. Causing audio chaos again, Eli.
Yeah, so, no. I'm familiar with that. What he's doing is what you sow is what you reap. And I'll give you an example. There was this guy, Bujo, and I was doing something for him, selling, let's say, some product. And I decided not to give him the money and not to give him his stuff and just basically rob him. So he came to me and said, hey, Neil, what's going on? And I ignored him. And he chased me down. Now, this guy was like 6'8", a big biker dude, right? So I get out of the car, and I think me at 5'6" is going to beat this guy. I hit him. His head went to the left. He looked at me, and he just swatted me one shot, and I went right down to the floor. Now I'm hugging his legs, right? I can't believe I got knocked down because you don't know how to fight. He's just big and gawky, but he's still freaking a lot bigger than me. And I hear this growl coming, and all of a sudden I heard like flesh hitting flesh, and I felt this tower leaning over. My brother came flying and caught him with a shot, and then he went down. Then it became footwork. We beat the piss out of him. A year later, I got beat up by a guy with brass knuckles. The guy that beat me up with brass knuckles, a year later, his son got batted down. So I understand what you're saying. What goes around comes around. What you sow is what you reap.
There's a scene in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie where they're facing Tokar and Razor. And I don't know which one of the turtles goes, you know what they say, the bigger they are. And then he runs towards him and does a flying kick. And it does nothing. And he just falls to the ground. And one of the other turtles goes, the more bones they break. So the way it says is the bigger they are, smack, nothing happens. The more bones they break. And then he starts beating the crap out of that turtle because he's much bigger.
Right. That's what happened to me, but the guy didn't have no fight game. The funny thing was when me and my brother were working him over, he's out of nowhere, his car pulls up and 5 guys jump out, and we got this guy Bujo on the floor, and we're working him over. They get out of the car, and they were like, hey, this ain't fair, 2 against 1. As they're talking, the guy Bujo gets to his feet, and they see how big he was. They all went, oh, okay, and they got back in the car and left.
Yeah, I saw that on a TikTok self-defense video. There's this guy that makes little TikTok shorts about how best to defend yourself. And he's got this one scenario where there's this enormous guy coming towards him. And he basically says, I'm going to try and catch this guy off guard by
trying to go for his leg, trying to get a takedown, trying to put him off balance. And the minute I do, I'm going to run away because the guy's bigger than me. And you're like, oh, that's a very realistic way of looking at it. You know, if the guy's a lot bigger than you, you're at a massive disadvantage. So if he's bearing down on you, catch him out by surprise by, you know, going in fully aggressive as you can in those few moments to try and gain a small advantage, and then run away as quick as you possibly can.
Yeah. Good advice, unless you got a gun.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's that, but he's just trying to explain, look, if there's a big guy bearing down on you, once you've taken advantage of the fact that he's quite top heavy, which is what he suggested to do, he's like, your best route is to try and get away from that person. That's your best option. Now, like, he's taking it from the position that they're already bearing down on you. What do you do when they're bearing down on you? Because if you just try and run, they'll just chase you. So you've got to try and get them on their arse somehow, which he explains, and then try and run away to give yourself the best chance of getting away.
Yeah, at least you got a head start. If you just turn around and run, he's right on your ass. I get it. But if you do like a leg sweep and he goes down, then you can get up and bolt.
I wanted to go back on what Eli was saying as far as what's always been. I was just talking about that. Candace was speaking about how Hollywood was created to be influential, to socially engineer and sway people of righteousness and society in general to follow trends, to think what's popular, to lure in people, to want to be, to fulfill their thirst for fame, fortune, gluttony, covetousness, envy, all the things that, the entertainment business goes through, right? And now that Hollywood is kind of dying and people are realizing they're not relying on these actors who are coming up here telling us to do this, like the way Oprah and The Rock was saying, donate money to help the people over in Hawaii and the islands that was hit by those, arguably intentional energy blasts or whatever it was.
Oh, God.
Nobody's falling for that anymore. So now that Hollywood is not as influential, because people can now read through the bull crap of these thespians and these actors and entertainers, because they're just put there to influence the public. Because if you can make your fan base, when you have a platform, you can sway them to go politically certain ways. That's why you see people saying vote this way, vote that way. So they're going now, she's saying they're going now to the faiths. They're going to the churches, whatever. And I said, before Hollywood's there, what was ever created, they used the faith in the church. Doesn't matter what denomination, to do the same thing, to lure people to behave and to be cultured into a certain social engineering. So that's repeating. There's nothing going to change that, because every industry, every entity is going to be infiltrated by the same wicked people that want to control the people. And the powers that be, those families, they know how to use it. So that's like what Eli was saying. There's always been the same thing we're dealing with now. The only thing that changed was the technology. That's all.
Yeah, the means of distributing the means of distributing the propaganda changes, but the propaganda itself stays exactly the same.
Evil arises and flourishes when good men hold their tongue. I like that quote I heard from the same guy.
Yep. Bingo.
Yeah, that
is so true.
That was Peterson again, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a key one, because really, if you look at it, good people are holding their tongue because they're afraid of losing their freaking jobs. But he also talks about that too. How would you look in front of your kids if you know something is wrong and you just bite your tongue because you don't want to lose your job? Well, isn't it more important to look good in front of your family and be a good example in front of your children?
Half the people we deal with don't have kids, though. They're like childless beaters, aren't they? So that's not of consequence to them half the time. They're just out for their selfish selves because they've been,
societally left in that position, as opposed to, there is a word for this, like involuntary something or other, incel or something like that. I can't remember the word.
And also, don't be naive to not know that those that you remain silent to not expose or make them face punishment. Don't think that you're not going to be victimized by the same crap that others are being victimized by that you don't say anything about. Your turn is coming. And you're deserving of having it happen to you because you didn't say anything.
I think our current set of trolls are most worried about Nathan becoming an accepted, quote unquote, influencer.
Yep.
Influencer in the realm of flat earthdom. And
you know something, I agree with you.
Yeah, that's what they're acting on. The problem is, or it's interesting to me sociologically, is that in spite of Nathan's bravado and his technique for providing entertaining content, as all influencers are wont to do, his book and life thesis, we'll call it, that Earth is measured flat. It always has been, and I ain't no big deal in this. Anyone can do this. I ain't here to influence you because it's going to happen whether whether you believe it or not. You're going to use it whether you believe it or not. I'm just pointing this out. Is an antithesis, or it's an anti-influencer. And so it'll be interesting going on various podcasts if they'll have you. Haven't seen one yet. We'll see what happens when it happens. But, if they'll have you, the whole reason they'll do that is because they consider themselves influencers. And they're, hopefully bigger media people in the market. And they will find you useful to keep their influence content up to date.
I think that's why they're coming so hard against the book, because the book nobody else has a book with flat earth measurements in it. There's no books that break down measurements like the one that Nathan has put out. And that's what they're petrified of.
Well, no, I don't know if they're petrified. They don't know what to do with it.
They're petrified.
This flips back to David Weiss. Like I said, just from my observing of things, I'm not a big follower of anybody, but I know media enough. Have watched people like this Brad Lee guy. All right. He's the new alpha male guy on all the social media. He's going to be, if not already, a pretty big powerhouse, probably getting up there close to Rogan, only cooler and more manly, and definitely taller. But he had David Weiss on because David Weiss is
a useful idiot.
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly what I was going to say. But he's also a buffer for Brad Lee to bounce off of in order to do a soft landing on things like the moon landing and all the conspiracy stuff and things like that they've lied to you, NASA lies, et cetera, et cetera. And, the jabs, everything. Okay. The world lies to you kind of stuff, and being woke about stuff. That's his shtick. That's his influence realm. All right. So, Weiss provides the buffer to breached the moon landing stuff, where Brad feels very comfortable going, yeah, well, obviously, it's just all looks fake. And yeah, no big deal. Totally accept that. Whatever, Okay. Slips the flat earth stuff in there. That's interesting. But he's not going, oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. The earth is flat. Stuff. He still has lots of questions. And he's got the usual questions, ones that Nathan would just answer and go, well, duh, and place him in the position where he would have no choice. He'd be up against the rock in a hard place. Brad would. He would have to say, but what about, he'd have to brace unless he was willing to cognitively and risk his whole identity as a reasonable person and say, yeah, Earth is flat.
No, he'd rather say how it's not a globe, right? It's funny. Yeah. They'll push that how Earth is not a globe, right? They'll talk about that all day long, but then they'll resist when it comes to Earth being measured flat.
Yeah, but this is the natural progression, I think. This is the natural progression from it's no way to, well, maybe it's not a globe, to maybe it is mostly flat, to, oh yeah, we've always known it's been flat.
I agree with you.
Measurement.
I agree with it. Yeah, I agree with that. That is, yeah, it's a transition. You're right. I agree with everything you just said. Because even for the many that were globers, like Neil, you could say you had to gradually move your way through to realizing, oh no, it ain't no globe. Then you had to work on proving why it's not a globe. Now you've done that. Now you've proven why it must be flat. So I agree 1000%. And the point that you made about the influencers, Nathan with his inconsequential stands, he's not a threat to the influencers. If anything, he gives the influencers, like you said, a boost, another category to show I got this guy here who wrote this book. It just makes their topic, their subject matter on their podcast as an influencer even more interesting.
Yes and no, because you just literally have to take the idea. It's measured flat. It's always been measured flat. It always will be measured flat. The earth is flat. And that's it. That places the influencer in the uncomfortable position of having to
deal with it.
Yeah, and deal with it, go full in. You either go in or you go away.
Now, let me address one thing D. Rose said. D. Rose, I don't think that. Yeah, we had to go to that because in 2015, when I came out, there was nobody talking about measurements. All right? There wasn't even, it was skipped right past. We didn't see it. So I don't believe people have to go through how it's not a globe to come to an understanding that it's measured flat now.
Yeah, we're presenting that. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, we've given them the book of truth. I got you saying, but I understand where he's coming from as far as how this podcast host talking to Nathan will be troubled to either decide on debating and exposing himself and making it a controversial interview or conceding and going away and never having him back because, and like you said, Nathan may only convince him if he is a glober that it's not a globe, like you said. And he may say, well, it's definitely not a globe. They definitely didn't land. But as far as the measurements, even though we're seasoned to be able to grasp that, not everybody can grasp that, especially if you want to tell me that they're not liars and they're experts that are surveyors, pilots, what else? Navigators, what else? Who still...
It's easy to grasp it.
No, listen to me. I'm talking about
what a measurement is.
Yeah, no. Listen to me. You just told me I am wrong for calling someone that uses measurements, okay? That uses measurements and then still says it's a globe, not a liar. They just don't know. So how do you expect a layman, the audience of this guy that he's talking about, that's the host, talking to Nathan and Nathan breaking it down in simplicity and them grasping it?
Okay, because you didn't, I'm going to explain to you why. Because you told us all how you did it. You didn't come in and explain, listen, how measurements work. You know, you just questioned him, had him say a few things to get him in a situation where he can realize it himself. That's not being done here. We are leading the charge and telling them how Earth is measured. So it's a learning that's happening while Nathan is speaking. If they got an ear to hear, they're going to hear it. And if they've done any type of work in their life where they had to use a level or measurements, they will comprehend. It's not hard.
So let me ask you a question. So the experts, not the regular Joes, so the experts are what? Lying when they keep on saying that it's round? Or
they're just indoctrinated.
Okay. So that's okay. So don't expect the listening audience to grasp, or that host to grasp it as being measured, because they've been indoctrinated so much. The best they may come out of is the first step that this gentleman just said of the transition is finally accepting that it's not a globe. They're not going to grab the measurements.
I personally, to be honest, I really don't care anyway. If they do, if they don't, I really don't care. That's on them. I just know what I know, and that's all there is to it. There's no way around anything. And from the first moment it was laid down, I understood it. And it just keeps you get more and more information as you go along. You start seeing more and more flat earth sine qua nons or prerequisites. You start to see it everywhere. You can't stop seeing it. And that's the problem. They're everywhere.
They've always existed, Neil. We know they always existed.
Right. So here's the thing. They took it from geography and they put it in science. So if we can get it back to where it belongs, geography, maybe less people will be indoctrinated.
You mean they will be unindoctrinated because they're already indoctrinated?
I'm talking about going forward. If they would put freaking measurements in Earth's geography where it belongs, instead of in some science class, like it's a scientific endeavor, then perhaps the generations going forward won't be indoctrinated. They'll be educated.
Okay. So you talking about so you're like me. This is what I say. I don't argue with old dogs because I don't try to teach old dogs new tricks. I'm teaching the youth. That's who I talk to. That's why you don't see me on these servers and on here a lot, because it's always the same situation. The same experts, the same so-called this and that, give you the prerequisites, whatever you call it. And then sine qua non. And then they turn around and then they still say it's not flat, and they'll say something else other than it's flat. They'll say, okay, it's not a globe, but it's, so what I'm saying is you do care, because that's why you're still here, because you have no children coming on these panels. These are all adults. They're 21 and older, 18 the minimum, and they're already indoctrinated. So you're either here to convert and seek the future, but deep down, you do care. Because if you only knew, and if Nathan only knew, there's no need to have this show, because you already know.
Yeah, but I like talking about it. I like hanging out.
Because you care. Because you care. You like to prove that it is.
Not really. Like, I give up too, because like the guy I work with, he's an older guy. I pretty much, right from the beginning, like, we were talking about things, and he's like they want to believe in outer space and moon landings and freaking Mars getting there one day. That's on them. All I could do is say, north is not up. Think about what you're saying. That's all I could do. I mean, it really doesn't. Years ago, I would agree with you, but now I really don't give a shit.
That's me. That's me too. I don't care about anybody that has hair in their chest and on their genitals and call themselves a man or a woman that can drink and go to war. All I care about is the children, my nieces, nephews, and their friends. That's who I talk to. I don't talk to the adults. Just like,
but you gotta get it. You gotta get it back into the. You gotta. Yeah, well, if you care and you want to do something, then get the freaking start going to the education system and ask them, how come the measurements of Earth are not being discussed in geography? Why do we have Earth and where we live in science class?
But there you go. Now I'm going to the sources that don't want to tell the truth. which are the adults that are the indoctrinators and the indoctrinated. I'm not going to waste my time on that.
Yeah, but those people are not telling the truth.
Nathan,
hold on, they're just following the curriculum.
That's why Nathan homeschools instead of going to his children's school that they can attend to, talking about why you doing this and why you not doing that. I don't rely on others.
But you just said you only care about the youth.
The children.
So what, are you going to leave the youth out there?
No.
Go to the schooling system and ask them, why is geography not being taught?
But who am I talking to? Am I talking to adults? I'm wasting my time. All they'll tell me is because it is round and it is a globe. And then I'll have an argument like y'all have with Bev and with Rufus and all. I don't have time for that. You know how I get the children? I see children. My children are children. My children have friends. That's how I reach one, teach one. That's an old village proverb. Teach one, each one. You don't have to have a plethora of children. You could just teach one at a time. Teach one at a time. Just teach them. You don't have to go to school and say, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Because you're going to get resistance from those people that have the power.
Not really, because from what I hear, there's flat earth in schools now. When you talk to a kid, you go to eighth grader and ask them, and they'll tell you, oh, yeah, we know it's flat.
Oh, I didn't hear that. No, the curriculum. Oh, yeah. You saying the curriculum is, or you saying the children are? They're getting it from
the kids are.
Right.
Because
you know why?
The kids are on Discord. The kids are online.
Okay, time out. Okay, so back to what I said. They're not at the schools getting it. You made it seem, when you first said it, I thought you said they're being taught flat earth, like it's a subject matter.
No, not in school, of course not.
You know where they're learning it from? The ones we criticize, too. They're learning it from Eric Debay. They're learning it from the TikTok. They're learning it from the Feast of Nonsense cats that are not telling them about measurements, but they're still learning.
Well, they're being skeptical of it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool, but they're doing the transition that this brother just talked about. One step at a time. Took you time, give them time.
It didn't take me no time.
Okay, Neil, because it took you 10 years.
I'm here 10 years.
Right. It took you 10 years, like all of us, to realize that Earth's measured flat. End of discussion. Before that,
no, that's what we started talking about. We never went to the Feast of Nonsense. That was my first. Hold on, you missed everything. Once I came to Flat Earth Debate, all that other shit went out the window, D-Rose.
No, I'm not talking about Flat Earth Debate. I'm talking about when you transitioned. When did you transition to be interested in Flat Earth? Prior to being with
my brother told me in 2015.
You're going to talk about a different transition then. Thought Neil was going to say, well, I first became a man after I got tired of my vagina.
2015, when my brother told me, after 2 weeks of freaking berating him, I couldn't find proof of the globe because that's what I was looking for. But once I came to Flat Earth Debate, actually it was David Weiss that mentioned it, that got me curious to who is this guy Nathan Oakley and where can I find this channel? And I couldn't even find it then. Then I finally found it. And the first time I put it on, that's it. That was the only thing I wanted.
Exactly. But like I said, before David Weiss influenced you to go this route, you had to transition through knowing and hearing about the wall. You didn't know.
I would have told you that Nicholson Morley was an experiment.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is these children that are not learning it from the curriculum, thusly, I don't need to waste my time going to the public school that has been orchestrated since 1900s to dumb us down and make us the laborious industrial complex slaves. I don't need to go to them and say, why aren't you teaching this and why don't we teach this? Because they're going to resist. So all I have to do is do like the children are doing. I'll be their influencer like Dave Weiss is and like all the other guys that are not talking about measurements because they're definitely not listening. Those kids you talking about, they're not getting it from FED. They're getting it from flat earth anti-globers. They're getting it from anti-globers. But it's a transition. It's a step. It's step one. They're in elementary school. We have our PhDs right now. There's nothing after measurements. We got our PhDs. They're now just learning it. So we have to give that space to be able to. Yeah. No, we don't have to stop saying what we're saying. We keep saying what we're saying, but sooner or later, those same children that they're going to be talking about, yeah, because there's an ice wall, they're going to eventually grow like you did.
That will make me lose my mind, D-Rose.
I know, but they will grow. They will realize, because they're going to run into me or you, who's going to expound on the real details that's so simplified. They're going to be like, is that all it means?
Basically.
Yeah, they're going to be like Cat Williams. Is that all it means? And they're going to be like, wow. And then they're going to spread the word. And then they're going to be like, that's what Mrs. Patterson taught me in geometry.
Well,
that's what Mr. Nicole.
To give you a bit of hope, one thing I have noticed recently, right, is you may have heard me describe this particular turn of events where I say what seems important now will definitely get superseded. Next year there'll be something that's more important. Although this seems like the end of the globe, this is the biggest globe defeat ever, and this will end the entire argument. That's how everything seems when it first gets exposed to us, right? Everything seems super important. But when you move past things, you go, why isn't everyone around me taking on board this argument that we see as the be-all and end-all? It's happened repeatedly. You get something important, it seems important, everyone gets it, or for the most part the people in close proximity get it, but then the people external to that don't want to use it or aren't utilising it, and it gets frustrating. You see that pattern over and over again. However, in recent times, that is not what is happening. Measured flat, although it originally came up against some combative people on the inside, which was also unusual, right? That is to say, the initial wave of people from which would normally be saying this is the most important argument ever, this ends the debate. With Measured Flat, it was the other way around. The people in close proximity went, we don't like this. But the people ancillary to the people closest by, some of which you ended up stabbing in the back, it might be said, the people ancillary to them have picked it up. I hear loads of people saying Measured Flat that aren't us, that aren't close proximity to us. They're just some random guy. You know, you could even, to a certain extent, consider Dave Weiss that guy. He's not close proximity to cheerleader for whatever the argument that's perceived to have on the table currently is the most important argument ever, as I've just exampled, right? Dave Weiss is somebody ancillary to us, right? He's not in our close proximity. So when you hear him talking about how it's measured flat, or various other TikTokers talking about it being measured flat, arguments in Discord servers being discussed where people who we've never even heard of telling ballers that it's measured flat, you're like, oh, because this is so much more simple than every other perceived argument, which is in the complexities of begging the question of sphericity to unpack it from a heliocentric standpoint as an anti-glober, those complex arguments get superseded massively when you just go, it's just measured flat. It's really easy.
Yes.
So the people ancillary to us have picked this up quickly and started rolling with it. I've noticed it. And in some small fashion, I maybe am putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 5 here. But I think that might also partially be why people are so vehement and bracing against me. Obviously not realising that that's actually generating a stir of publicity that people will be intrigued by. In other words, they're having the complete opposite effect. It's the Streisand effect. When they're going, there's nothing to see here, he hasn't got any measurements in his book. In fact, it's total rubbish. You're like, but you're talking about it. That will generate more of a stir. You're having the opposite effect than the one you desire. By saying, don't look over here, everyone immediately wants to look over there. Right? So that's what's happening. But I think that's a consequence of them going, shit, seeing how flat it's measured is so simple that it would actually take a foothold in the general public. So we need to put a stop to this. We need to brace against this with every ounce of might that we can muster. In fact, we need to shut it down. We need to shut the source down. We need him arrested. Get him locked up. He's stealing your data. You know what I mean?
This is my point. I said it earlier. When it comes to measurements, they're losing their mind because it ends everything. There's nothing so deep where you have to unpack a whole bunch of nonsense like you just said. Agreed.
But yeah, there's no extra complexity in the levels of understanding how flat Earth is measured. What you take is any example of any Earth measurement ever, even if it's a complex globe example, and within that is a much more simplistic, just mile distance, height distance, flight level distance, surface level, whatever it is that's requiring a flat Earth, by prerequisite be adhered to for the argument to make sense, you go, well, that's within the argument. So if you understood the argument, you could obviously understand the prerequisite measurements the argument is based upon, because they're lesser in terms of the complexity they must hold to make the argument work, which is obviously of greater complexity. So therefore, just being measured flat is the most simple explanation for the world you inhabit, and everybody, for the most part, would be familiar with the terms that are being used by both sides. If you want to perceive that there's a debate between globe Earth and flat Earth, both sides are using distances, both sides are using altitudes, both sides are using directions, both sides are using flight level, surface level, sea level. Whatever it is that's being used is universally understood to be flat by all sides. It's just for 12 years it went without saying, but what is going without saying is simultaneously the thing that will allow the general public to go, yeah, I knew all along it was flat. And it's not that big a deal.
100%.
Last 2 nights I've been on Discord in 2 different servers. I've heard other flat earthers use that. Like they'll go, oh, the Earth's measured flat. And the glober would be like, oh, really? Okay. How is it measured flat? And then the flat earthers on both different servers start talking about laser tests. So it's kind of they're bastardizing it a little bit.
All right. So they need a little help.
That's a big thing with me is that what flat earthers have required or wanted is always the silver bullet. They want just the proof. They want the proof. All right.
Yeah,
so
well, they want to make, it's not the proof.
Let
me just step on you a second. I'm really sorry. What you're trying to say is they want something practical that they can show they're doing something with. So when it comes to the laser tests, it sounds sciencey, lasers, right? Back to the 12-year-old fart-sniffing element in people's mindset. But also it's something to practically show to somebody else, right? That's what they want. But then if you break that down, okay, so it's got one step less complicated. If you say Earth's measured flat, why laser tests? Okay, well, let's break down what a laser test would be. Well, we're pointing a laser at a distance. Well, how far? Well, this linear flat Earth measurement of miles, of course. Now, when you break that down to somebody who's overcomplicating it because they want to seem like a guru, I can already imagine the person who would do this. The person that wants to seem like, well, I'm the man with the laser, therefore I can lord it over you for understanding the complexities of measuring a flat Earth distance for the laser to traverse. You can see where this is going, right? But it does literally for the average dude who can't necessarily comprehend things that are more complicated, it breaks down in the reverse order. So when they go, well, let's try and figure out what this person means when they say that they fire a laser at a distance. Well, the distance bit is the more simplistic bit. It's the constituent part of the argument, if you want to perceive there to be one, with an example of a laser. One of the constituent parts is having a frickin' distance, and the frickin' distance is flat. So it breaks down into less complex parts rather than having to break down more complex parts of the argument as it's previously been laid out. So measured flat allows people to recognise it as you dumb down the ability of the person who's hearing it. So it's caught on quickly. Now, you compare that to the 6 years it took people to start understanding the freaking black swan. You're like, well, this has really only permeated the community for a maximum of 12 months from its original inception as we've been wrapping our heads around it. And now you hear people parroting it, albeit with their own fart-sniffing desire to be a guru attached with whatever bullshit that they're trying to sex it up when they make it more technologically sciencey with lasers or whatever. But, you know, each to their own. The fact that people are saying it at all is a testament to the weirdness of how originally our own community was saying, oh, I don't like this. Like, what? Yeah. Why not? It's really good. It's so basic. No one's going to buy it. In fact, it's wrong. And here's my example that uses flat Earth measurements to show how wrong this should be. And you're like, this makes no sense. But then you go to, like I say, the slightly once removed, extraneous people that we don't have a direct connection to. And when they're saying it and parroting it off in servers, and you're seeing it written in comments that have got no association with your videos, you're like, wow, people have actually taken this on board.
Is a genuinely good title for the book? Therefore, it's a concept that most people at any level, at almost any age, can take on board really easily. That's why it's going to, I think, require a lot more bracing against by our very limited in numbers, dweeby little twats that we have had to deal with for 12 years. And the fact that they want to go, someone's going to come and get you because of how you're doing this. You're like, yeah, shock and awe. It's like a bee sting. I remember my dad talking about this in this context when I was dealing in some legal capacity with someone I was suing, and they employed quite a slick correspondent or legal representative to deal with me, and they were quite nasty and backbiting. And each time you get a letter from them, the sting was less and less effective. As you got more and more accustomed to what seems like something devastating coming your way in a sting, and then you go, well. The beekeeper, after a few years, it still hurts when you get stung, but it's not like you're jumping out your pants and panicking that you're going to die. You're just like, oh, one of them's caught me. There's a sting. You know what I mean? Then you carry on gathering up the honey. You know what I mean? After a while, the sting doesn't achieve its ends, which is to make you run away from the hive. But the beekeeper, even with his suit, that occasionally the one bee that manages to penetrate that really thick suit, which does happen, they're just like, oh, wow, I'm more surprised that they managed to penetrate the suit.
That's true. Yeah, I know exactly. I know exactly who Vax is talking about, too. That's 24/7. That's that Australian guy. 60-mile laser test, mate. It's measured flat.
60 miles.
Laser test.
Well, you see, there's got this extra level of redundancy that brings me a massive wry smile. So rather than 60-mile laser test, you can cut that in half and go 60 miles. Full stop. That's it. What else do you need? As soon as you've got that distance, it's a horizontal linear measurement of miles. To have that value, to ascribe it to something else, means Earth's been measured flat already.
Yep. We would say miles, you say?
Exactly. Distance, you say? I've been doing it like with the lighthouse, where they tried to go, you said there was a perfect globe proof. I'm like, yeah, if you run the 31 miles we are observing this lighthouse from through the begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator, suddenly it's a perfect globe proof? Yeah, right up until the point that we recognised how the magic trick worked. So as soon as you put anything through the calculation, it's perfect globe proof. So long as you ignore how flat the distance you've measured is. You know what I mean? That's how it works. What about... go on.
Nathan, this is like you said, it's for the... I ain't gonna say narcissist. That's kind of harsh, but I would say more of the self-gratifying, fart-sniffing ones, and the entertaining ones. They want to pull out their big old, marker chart and be like, see, and show all the graphics and do all of this stuff. That's more fun and it's more exciting for them. We've simplified it so much. It's boring. It's boring to them, and it really doesn't give them enough. Time on their channels, because it's almost like going to a movie. If Flat Earth was a movie, it would be like a 5-minute movie.
Yeah, but sometimes we do 8-hour shows.
Yeah, I know, because what are we doing? Arguing with the trolls?
No, socialising. That's the weird thing. When you actually break it down, this is something else I can do as a consequence of realising there's no debate. Suddenly, being in the winning, losing, I've got the better of this person, I've shown that person is actually a liar. Once you go, none of that matters. You suddenly go, hang on, let's just take a step back. Who's actually having this discussion and why are we having it? Well, all we're really doing is socialising. Now, when you're socialising with scumbags and there's bad actors in your group, sometimes you just have to deal with that because the wider group that you're interacting with is represented by a small minority of scumbags. But for the most part, we're just interacting with people who believe something contrary to what we know. And by coincidence, we also used to be in that position. Now, it sounds really arrogant when you break it down, but you're like, well, that is just the fact. We all had a heliocentric worldview. We've learnt better now. And therefore, there's an easy way of seeing how people around us previously go, I can take advantage of that. I'm in a superior position mentally than this person who is now beneath me because I used to be in the ignorant position they were in. Now, the fact that what gets braced back against that desire to lord it over next man who's been lied to about the sphere is some other dweeb who says, well, you haven't been lied to. Actually, I know more than you do. And look, it's still spherical. Well, all you end up doing is socialising with that dweeb, because that dweeb feels he's got the right to come up and talk to you because socially you've been placed below him as a flat earther that's stupid. So therefore he's been given his brave pills to come and interact with you and tell you how wrong you are about how flat earth is. But when that's happening, everybody who's saying it's flat isn't saying it's flat, they're saying it's not a ball. So what are we doing? We're just socialising with them. We're just interacting with them. Now, when we were interacting with them and it felt like, I must get this win, because if I don't get it, I might be wrong. I must show this person's a charlatan, because if I don't show it, then they'll prove that I am one. It's all projected fear when you feel like you've got to deal with it. When you go, none of this has any consequence, you go, let's have a little look at the people in this arena. And it was from those moments on, I'm like, well, the people on my own side seem to be hippies and conspiratards and fart-sniffing, pot-smoking, open-toe sandal-wearing wankers for the most part, the ones that are vocal at least, the ones that want to be the gurus. And when you go, well, who are the people that are opposing us? Oh, they're bottom of the barrel, boring-ass spotty dweebs, adenoidal voices that would have had their heads flushed down the bog at high school by the cool kids, who found them very irritating as they tried to tell them how they knew better and then got their heads flushed down the bogs as a consequence by someone who just didn't want to frickin' hear it. So that's when you can go, I don't care if you are perceived to take this as a victory. Because, look, Nathan was shown to be wrong. You're like, well, what does that mean? You've actually put me on a pedestal, haven't you, you little dweeb? Right, you need to show how cool the cool kid isn't. Like, why do you care how cool the cool kid isn't? And why do you want to tell everyone about how cool he isn't? Oh, because you can then feel like you can jump on the pedestal you've knocked him off. But that means you've put him on a pedestal, that kid that's flushing your head down the bog. So you break it all down in a very different way when you're not concerning yourself with winning. There isn't anything to win. What do I win? Or do I get a speedboat if I prove you're wrong? Oh, Toon was shown to be a liar conclusively by his own side the other day. Did I get a speedboat for it? I didn't get anything. I mean, he simultaneously burdened himself with a load of bricks, like a heavy burden to haul around that makes him feel like he needs to get into the ring with me to alleviate that stress by taking it out of my face. You're like, man, that is a pain, a burden that I will never have to carry around, that sort of anxiety and pain. And it's mentally so stressful to have to carry that shit around with you. Now, the fact that it manifests its way out of people like Toon by them wanting to cause pain to people like me, it's just like, no, you were in pain and you're trying to externalise it. You're trying to pass it on to someone else. Now, it's unfortunate that I have to be burdened with it in return, but I don't have to be burdened. I don't care. Most of the time, once we've finished doing what we do online, these people are, a fart in the wind. I couldn't care less anymore. Half the time, I don't know their bleeding names. There's certain ones that make themselves prevalent to me. Like, Toon proactively has contacted me. The girl earlier was talking about his 10k challenge. So I didn't know anything about it. I'm not watching Toon, but he made it aware in my comments when he's proactively chasing after me. Now, he probably doesn't psychologically realise that he's got me on this pedestal, but he has. What I say is of consequence to a lot of these people. And they just don't realise.
He called you from Antarctica.
Yeah, exactly. His desire to communicate things that he can feel like he's lording over next man. It's like, why do you feel that you have to be subservient to this person and demonstrate how you're superior to them by lording things over them? It's like, now have some introspection and develop some self-confidence. Rather than feeling that you've got to get the best of next man. That's sad. You're always going to put... But this is just beta behaviour, isn't it? It's just... I can't change what these people are. Like I say, they're just the fart-sniffing dweebs at the bottom of the barrel of society as they nasally tell you about Earth moving around the boring sun or whatever boring shit that they've decided to invest in cognitively. Because they've got nothing better to do, presumably. Like, they're not being entertained by a load of ladies, or they wouldn't find the time to do this fart-sniffing shite.
Well, look at that young girl today. She was talking about flat planes, but multitude of flat planes. She still wants to... I would realize she wants to keep space alive. That's what it is with her. She's not ready to relinquish the idea of space, outer space.
Not necessarily outer space, the dimensions that are sold in modern movies. So back in the day, we were sold the idea of outer space and space travel and space Lego. Now, the more advanced multi-dimensional ideas and concepts make their way through the mainstream through the same means they've always made through to the general public. So with the stories that were told of old, when I compare an old religion that would have been mocked a couple of 100 or 500 years ago by the Christian dominant worldview that was being purveyed to the masses and controlled through the churches, through a means of distributing information and propaganda. Well, if you go back when they were mocking the idea of the gods, the Greek gods, that were obviously deemed to be stupid, even though they're just a different control structure, we now have it full circle, where we have Age of Ultron and timelines and multi-dimensional theory that's propagandized through the means of superheroes and gods. And what do you know? Some of them are the exact same gods from prior to the Christian foothold about 500 years ago. Well, yeah, exactly. God of Thunder, Odin. Right? These are the manifestations of old control structures that have been deemed laughable and then brought back into the propaganda narrative through the means of propagandizing people. Movies, theatres, stories. It's always been done through stories, right? You make the unreal real through familiarity in fictional narrative. It doesn't matter if it's Greek gods in the olden times or Greek gods in the Avengers. It's the same outcome. Multi-dimensional bullshit that people want to keep hold of because they feel like they've got a comprehension of it. You're off mute, Eli. Eli. Yeah, so people want to retain the bullshit that they've picked up on because they feel like they've got an understanding of it as they've seen it at the movies. Likewise, they'd have done the same when they were told it by whatever equivalent of a priest would have told them about the Greek gods and given them moralistic versions of reality to believe in, to give them some sense of direction. Now, some people could suggest that those control structures are noble in terms of their desire, but for the most part, a lot of these stories are done for the sole intention of propagandizing you into a narrative. Multi-dimensional theory is the science fiction of the cinema, but simultaneously the science fiction of science. Because it isn't. We all know exactly what they mean when they say theory, and there's no scientific validity being offered to the string theory or multi-dimensional science that they pretend is being echoed in the cinema. You're back to Bill talking from Star Trek's perspective about the difference between science fiction and science. Well, there isn't one if your science is actually pseudoscience, because you've hijacked it and then tried to parallel that pseudoscience being pushed through the schools with the mainstream media that propagandizes the idea of the pseudoscience that's taught in schools as being real because it's being shown to you by Captain America and Thor and Odin and whatever that time wizard's called. You know, all of that is multi-dimensional bullshit. Propagandizing the children of today in the way I was propagandized with Red Dwarf, through their desire to propagate a brief history of time into the mind's eye of a young, impressionable audience. But the overall desire, the propagandization of the individual is the main objective, and outcome is control. That's it. That's all people want.
And can I
Money,
say something
power,
about
control? Sorry, D, go ahead.
I just want to say something real quick. Other than the colloquial, connotative understanding of space, space as well, like the space I'm sitting in, that's considered a space. If you was to vacate a space or rent a space, it's all measurements. It's measurements upon that requires another prerequisite. What is it? Soucé toufois, filet mignon? A horizontal flat plane, because you cannot have space without a measurement, because space is that is which between the measurement of a vertical and the horizontal. Length, width, and height.
Yes,
that's
you're describing
space.
a Cartesian system that everything that ever has been described with length, breadth, and depth has ever had to use, ergo, by prerequisite to describe anything, including but not limited to curvature, requires Euclidean distances, heights, and widths.
So if the girl wants to embrace space, let's just elaborate and break it down for her so that she understands that which she embraces is not foolishness. She just has to understand it in the aspect of reality, like you just broke it down, to make people like her feel like, okay, yeah, space is everywhere. It's down here. It's in between your stomach. I mean, it's everywhere. It doesn't have any denotative, like, finite construct. It's space and space. Between the glass and that what's between that glass, the water fills the space of the glass. What's the big deal? So there's nothing wrong with her embracing space. You know what I'm saying? We're above.
She's got 4 dimensions of it, bro.
Huh?
She's got 4 dimensions of it.
Well, the fourth dimension is time, and time isn't a dimension, right? Time is a derived concept by way of the movement of the lights that we average, so that we can describe it with a convention to each other to put into calendars, clocks. You get the general idea. But the derivation has been turned into a dimension, which means that you can then have a narrative that works outside of its convention. So when you describe the arrow of time, you can describe it with the movement of a clock, which has been derived from the movement of the light, or you can describe it as decay, that's entropy, the arrow of time, right? Well, in both of those conventions, it moves, if you're going to describe it with that convention, the movement is in one direction. Now, in reality, we just experience whatever you would call now. So there is no time in those conventions as extrapolated into a line that can have a direction. But if you can have somebody understand at a conceptual level that it could have a direction, then you can have, number one, it move in different directions. No, you can't. You can't defy the second law of thermodynamics. Entropic decay is an absolute. That's why it's a law of nature. And when you say, well, what about moving the clocks backwards and what happened previously being capable of occurring again, well, then again, you're bastardizing the way you've derived the concept of time to begin with. It's the movement of the sun in the direction you observe it to travel when you observe that as the so-called expression of time as the movement of day and night over cycles. Well, you're never going to make the sun move backwards. And even if it did, that's what gave you the derivative of this convention we call time in this instance. It wouldn't mean that the experience that we have as an entropic decay would suddenly go in reverse. That's absurd. But we've got these conventions that they can then play with because they're then put into a mathematics that you can call it whatever you like. You can move it in backwards and forwards if you derive the convention outside of the original maths used to create it. You can just mathematically work outside the convention, which is precisely where you end up with things like heliocentric orbital motion, because people have done exactly that. They've taken the conventions that were derived from things like light movements in the sky and then created out-of-the-box conventions to describe those movements. Well, then when you move further down the line and that's the pinnacle of explaining how the lights move, people will reify that as though that is the world. The net result, we end up believing that we're still on a fucking sphere.
And you know what?
Yeah,
it's
but not only that, the years will vary. I mean, if you're a Jew, you're not in 2026. You are in 5,783. I mean, this is all arbitrarily. If you ask a different religion, they will tell you that they are in a different time zone because it's from where they start counting.
Look, you guys are trying to have...
It's even simpler than that. Is where we are right now or in different parts of the plane. Are we in different dimensions?
I'm just wondering whether or not you guys are trying to have subtle jabs at me. We've had transitioning and now we're talking about Jews. As a black transgender Jewish lesbian, I find all of this highly problematic, I've got to be honest.
No, but think about it. Right now, if I was wealthy and I had a Learjet, I could fly to Hawaii or California right now and be like, oh, snaps. It's 10 o'clock again, or it's not, you know what I'm saying? Does that mean they're in a different dimension? If we all clapped our hands right now and we can hear ourselves clapping our hands on our speakers, does that mean we're in different dimensions? That's how stupid it is if you think about it. It's stupid.
Yeah, well, once you can extract the convention into a time dimension which isn't in any way comparable to length, breadth, and depth, you can play with those maths and increase beyond the fourth into the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. That's where you end up with things like multi-dimensions and string theory. Yeah? That's what they've extracted from Einsteinian, pseudo-Riemannian geometry, where time becomes a dimension. And you can bend it and describe it with geodesics. It's nonsense,
It's just maths. It has no bearing on reality. Reality is mentioned and measured in 3 dimensions, and that's it. Entropic decay is a completely different, separate convention. The movement of the sun, if you want to average it and put it into a calendar, then fine. There's many other ways that you can derive similar systems, like lunar as opposed to solar. The fact that we live with a system that's derived from the solar-centric, heliocentric paradigm, and then the calendar's been devised up with that notion in the primary framework, doesn't mean that there aren't other derivable conventions that are similar but ultimately different, like deriving calendars from a lunar cycle, which is a far better convention, frankly. Not that I've got a high horse to get up on when it comes to a calendar that would be based on a lunar cycle, which would be a lot more sensible. The numbers work out.
It's the original convention anyway.
What's wrong with the pseudo-mathematics?
There's nothing wrong with any of them. It's only when you work outside of the conventions that you derive to better explain things. So if we're going to derive up or divide up a calendar, and we did it with 13 evenly spaced months with whatever it is, 28 days. If you did that, and people started to pay attention to the cycle of the moon to keep track of it, then suddenly people would pay more attention to the sky. So I humbly suggest that is why we have a distorted 12-month calendar. So it detaches us from the sky. Because at present, the best explanation for the sky is an out-of-the-box 500-year-old Roman Catholic derivation of elliptical orbital motion. And that is not the world we live in. It's been reified into the current circumstance where people think they're on a bleeding globe. They're not. They've worked outside of the mathematical box, outside of the convention used simply to better explain the light movements. That's it.
Damn, so Nathan, you're smoking today.
That's where you need to take people away from looking at the sky and say there's nothing to see here, and have punishments that are severe for people who do.
No doubt, Neil. And sometimes, and I even feel that, like, when truth is like that, like irrefutable. Like you get chills when you know. It's like it just your spirit.
You're hanging on every word.
Exactly, and you know how they say in the church, that's like the Holy Spirit. You know what I'm saying? It's like when truth is there, it's a feeling. You know it, just like when you could sense wickedness, you feel that.
I'm glad you said that.
Feeling.
Yeah, I was talking about this the other day. We didn't record this conversation. Wish we had now, Neil. We were just chatting on one of the servers as I was trying it out on my iPad. And I was saying to Neil about that Mike Tyson quote. He's talking to a prize fighter and he's all happy-go-lucky, and Mike Tyson's like lulling him into a full sense of security with his upward demeanour, his upbeat tone and his smile. And he's like, do you feel like God's blessing you when you're winning? And he's like, yeah, I do. He's like, yeah, man, it's good, isn't it? You feel like God's really behind you. And he's like, yeah, feel like everything's going your right way and God's looking out for you. He's like, yeah, I really do feel that way. And Mike Tyson says, well, the devil's watching you then.
That's right.
He's right next to you. He's definitely going to be paying you a lot of attention then. So just watch out. Devil's watching you also. And you're like,
but that's what's happening to you, Nathan. These guys are demonic and they're doing evil things to try and stop you. So
that's an interesting.
You say it, but
interesting turn of phrase when you say demonic. That was the words Chuck used. So there was something that somebody had done on Amazon. I won't go into it in explicit detail. But when he said, look, as a Christian, I see this behaviour as demonic. I am aghast at the level of vulgarity and persecution that you can suffer from these people who seem demonic. That was the word he used. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he was slightly taken back as a Christian, and he made note of that. In other words, he's like almost, touching his crucifix while this is happening. He's like, Jesus wept. Look at this. I am quite shocked. These people seem like demons. And you're like, yeah, while I'm going, thank you, Jesus, thank you. And I'm clasping my hands together and thanking him for all the things I've been blessed with as the book gets published. And then suddenly there's demons around you. And you're like, woohoo, check this out. And this a turn of events. And you just have to laugh at them. There's nothing else that you can do. Try and be a good, honest man. And then when people try and accuse you of doing the criminal acts they project onto you can bat it off. It can be water off a duck's back if you don't have any nefarious intent.
You know what I mean? If you are trying to screw people over, then yeah, you should be worried when the demons get there, because they'll extract that out of you.
Yep.
Yeah, it was weird. Like I'm sure you know I'm talking about as a Christian, Neil, and not that religious, but occasionally I do look up to the sky, go, thanks for sorting this out. I'm glad this has all finally resolved itself. I'm glad you're there. And then, like, it won't take long after doing that. And it's normally when nothing's happening, everything's calm, and you're just grateful that you've been blessed, in this case, with getting your book finally published after all of the heartache and strife to get there. You know, I'm not cursing. I'm going, thanks. You know, there's a reason my path is the way it is, and I'm grateful for how it is. But then almost immediately, suddenly the fucking devil's there. And you're like, whoa!
Yep.
Why this fiery demon all of a sudden? And you're like, yeah, by provenance, this is disturbing the apple cart, whatever metaphor, setting the cat amongst the pigeons. And the pigeons are a-flapping. It's just their fiery pigeons and their droppings are made of acid. You're like, whoa, bit extreme, innit? But you gotta laugh. But you just don't know. That's the kind of stir. If you want something to be a success, you need it to cause a splash. Now, for us, it's a fiery pigeon with acid poop splash. Well, that's just still going to cause just as much attention, as much as that is literally the attempt for the fiery pigeons to try and thwart people away. They're like flapping the people around on the periphery away. And what the people are actually doing is going, oh, it's only a pigeon, bang. Yeah, it's measured flat, like, with my laser test at a distance that I'm not acknowledging as a flat earth prerequisite. But I'm sure that'll change. Like I say, the book has made a multitude of inroads just with pure, affiliation. The affiliates program, you know, that was sold to me heavily when Chuck pitched the idea about 3 years ago with 10th beside him, and they're talking about it. And I just heard, this sounds a bit like a pyramid scheme, because there was like bonuses and incentives that were offered. And when I was listening to them, I'm like, oh, I kind of understand the structure, but it's a kind of a bonus for bringing other affiliates on and things like that. And I'm like, I like the fact that I can offer people who have supported me the ability to make money with my book. I like that. But beyond that, I don't care. But what I didn't appreciate was what he was trying to actually pitch to me was the notion of causing a stir, like people who recognise the worth of the material, going out and selling it, speaks volumes. And that, if you then have empathy for your opponent, go, oh my God, this would scare the living shit out of you if you were a baller right now. So because like I say, I'm not concerned with the argument. I'm not worried that they're suddenly going to debunk me talking about the equatorial plane being flat or something. They're reliant on it. So they've got nowhere to go. And again, your empathy kicks in and you go, this would be terrifying if you've spent your whole time trying to suppress this because you're actually trying to suppress your own concern for your belief. And then something like this happens, this would make you twitch, and you'd need to expel that from you. And I know it's going to find its way to me, but like I say, I'm just going to laugh at it. I've been well prepared, you know. Like when you're getting the grief and the rocks thrown at you, and you're getting bruised, you're like, again, you could look up at the skies and go, why have you forsaken me? Why do I deserve this punishment? Why do I deserve the police coming round or social services suggesting I'm a child beater? You're like, why do I deserve this? But instead you go, no. That was me becoming battle hardened. So that when someone comes around, I'll send the boys round, you're stealing data. You can go, no, I'm not. And laugh at them for it and call them a thief, which is the reality. And you go, that's because I've been battle hardened. That sting didn't make me run away from the hive. It made me call out the bee for being a dead bee. Oh, there you go, you're dead now. Because you're now a thief. And I will start calling Edebear a thief every time he talks to me from this point forth. When he explicitly said, I'm not going to be paying for the book, I won't be buying it. Then he tells me about how many people have stolen it, and suddenly he's been gifted a copy. It sounds like a guy in an interrogation room justifying why he's a thief, doesn't it? That's what it is. So Edebear will now be called a thief from here on forth, when what he's trying to do is have me scared that the boys will come round because I'm somehow stealing people's data. That's what he wants to spin, because he's got nothing to address the flat earth measurements in the book. Now today on the live show I was trying to summarise this, but obviously it's an hour or two later and I can have a bit of introspection and reflect upon it when I'm not doing a live show. But you know what I'm getting at, right?
It's only because I've gone through the bruises and hard knocks of flat earthing for 12 years that stuff like that doesn't have the effect that the people are hoping to intimidate you with it hoped it would have, when the only reason they're trying to throw that in your direction is to mask the reality that they're thieves. They hate their own reflection. They don't want to see the reflection as a guy that's stealing something, and that's really what is the reflection that Ed Bear would see currently. So he needs to expel that, doesn't he? Another flying pigeon with with acid for poop. Flying flaming pigeon. I don't know where the fuck that metaphor's come from. It's gonna stick though, I can feel it. Acid poop. Flying flaming pigeons.
This is what's scary to them. The way you just been breaking it down so concisely and like effortlessly. Right? It's got me just in awe, right? And I know everybody listening is hearing the same thing I'm hearing, and it freaking terrifies them.
Well, I hope you get... Hurry up and read the book, right? All I've done is poured out the way I speak into each of those chapters and then critiqued it to the nth degree. So once you read it, I know you were there for the entirety of the production process, but it's different when you're reading it, right? Retrospectively, you can say, oh, I was there while it was produced, but it's not until you're actually reading it and you sort of see that hopefully the most concise version currently is the book. That's, you know, like you say, without people having the rumpus there to talk through it so it doesn't reach the audience. When it's there in black and white, again, I feel the empathy coming over me. Maybe we should have more concern, like love thy neighbour, like you love thy enemy. Well, at the moment, they've got to be feeling pretty awful, and rather than going, shit, woe is me, these people are trying to destroy me or have my kids taken away or, again, shut my channel down, shut my publication down, remove me, fight me, whatever it is that they want to direct towards me that involves some sort of pain and suffering aimed at me, go, why are they doing it? Well, because this is incredibly painful for them. Now, we've always joked up until the book's publication that this would be difficult for them, and bleeding hell has it shown. Like, they've spurged that pain right out immediately, haven't they? In big doses. So maybe we should have more empathy for our enemy. This is a painful time for him.
You know what? I'm more into being indifferent. I believe that's what it means. That's the best way to be indifferent. Don't wish no bad on them, but, you know, hey, life goes on. Like the way I feel about anything that happens to people around the world that I don't know. It's sad, but it doesn't, you know, I can move on. I don't wish anything on them, but it's like an indifference, you know? And these are innocent people I'm talking about that I feel sorry for, but somebody that's my enemy or somebody that tried to hurt me or tried to hurt my loved ones or that was nefarious and wicked and malevolent, I think the best way to be is indifferent. So when you hear that, you know, they fell off a cliff on the car and died in flames, you know, just be like, really? What time the game come on? Basically.
That's cold, D-Rose. See, here's the thing. God takes no pleasure in the death of a sinner. So, like, it is, I understand what you're saying.
I'm not taking pleasure. I didn't say good for him. I hope he burnt. All I'm saying is, really? Oh, what time is the game?
What time's the game on? Well, I think I have put that question out there, and their thing is that Nathan is just evil, who hits his children, and just speaks about nasty things, and this man does not deserve anything but everything to be taken away from him. That's Toon's attitude. So that's real projection. So I really wonder about this guy. He's probably cracking his kids all over the freaking house.
I agree, as he starts munching on a pizza.
All right, I'm out, fellas. Till the next time. It was a pleasure.
See you later, D.
All right. Peace.
I'm still in Discord if you want to talk to Discord. I've just got my mouth full, so I can't fill at the minute.
Yeah, I've noticed that. You're on the flip side, right?
Yeah, once I finished the recording, I just stayed in here because why not? My wife had disappeared somewhere. But she's back now with pizza. Woohoo!
Is Vaxie still in there? Vax, you still in Discord?
No, he's not in there. We've got Alpha Murphy,
that...
Mikey, Steve, Flat Earth, Cafe, and Harp. Harp's on server deafen.
Yeah, Harp is upset. I know exactly who he was talking about. It's got to be an Australian guy in 24/7. We measure it flat with Liza test, mate. 60 miles and better. Long distance Liza test.
Long distance. Ugh. I'm sure people will pick up on it eventually.
I don't know. Something that seems so basic. Like, it's funny because they come right on and do it, and you bring it right to their attention, and they still don't understand. It's like very frustrating when you just sitting back listening. Because, like, how is this guy not getting what Nathan's saying? You're using distance. You're using freaking height. You're using words like above and below. I mean, it's not that hard.
I agree.
I think part of it is that they can't wrap their heads around measuring things like we always do, distance, miles, whatever. They just can't translate that to measuring the whole Earth that they've thought was a planet all this time. It's so big and stuff like that. I imagine talking again. I don't know why I'm bringing up Brad Lee again. It's just because I've seen the interviews with him and David. But he's like alpha man guy. He is very influential over the new, alpha manly culture stuff. Be a man things. And can't imagine him not knowing how to use a T-square or a square or a plumb bob and how we measure stuff. And water's level, we use water levels, and you could describe to him all the ways we measure stuff in the micro, and I still think there's just enough cog dis that they can't associate, using a bubble level and using that to measure the Earth, right? And it's just that, it's too simple because everything is with heliocentrism has to be complicated, right? And it's just too simple and too local and stuff because the Earth is so big and God made this beautiful universe. And I just don't understand. That's just the little click that needs to go through. You really need to just, going back to one deck, man, he's talking about with his friend. Let's start this conversation. Do you know what level is? How do you level something? What is level? Let's have this conversation. Now let's have the conversation of how we use the different tools to level stuff and measuring stuff. What an elevation angle is. How we measure mountains with that. There's plenty of sources to show you how Alberuni measured the height of a mountain or a building or a tree.
Hold on. This Bradley guy, I just pulled up a video from this Bradley. Nuclear bombs aren't real. Space is fake. And here's the proof.
David, that's the nonsense. He had David Weiss back twice.
Oh my God!
Talk about that stuff. His podcast is called Dropping Bombs. Okay, so he's dropping truth bombs, dude. All right, David Weiss was a very, very good, useful idiot for him. And like I said, he is the buffer that allows Brad Lee to maintain his alpha male, not a crazy guy status, while still being able to, cognitively accept something that he doesn't really accept right now or doesn't.
Okay, what's their proof that nuclear bombs is not real? Tell me, show me their proof. Give me proof that they know for sure and without a doubt that nuclear bombs do not exist.
Red herring. I'm talking about how to approach someone like him who is a huge influencer, and how this message of geometry and geography and cartography and navigation, how those facts are how we measure the Earth, and how the Earth has to be a horizontal plane in order to make those measurements. So that's all.
Well, if you look at it like that, I kind of understand what you're saying, because you say all of that and it's like, okay, but then you got a title like nuclear bombs are fake and space is fake. Dun, dun, dun.
Right.
And here's the proof.
Right. Well, and he's still got to use that buffer, that cushy pillow of David Weiss's nonsense to soften the blow of flat Earth, which is what most, if you look at the comments on those videos, their majority trollbot comments. Surely you can't believe this, Brad. No, you can't believe this. This is dumb. Oh yeah, well, the moon landing's fake. Duh. You're dumb if you don't believe them. If you believe the moon landing's fake, let's just skip on to something like nuclear bombs and all the other stuff that David brings up. His app is full of it. Plenty of material to soften the blow that the Earth is flat, and we don't have to go into measurements. Going into measurements puts him in the vice, and he has to either say yes or say no. He can't say maybe. When you say, I measure an elevation angle to Polaris, and that angle measurement is my latitude. And fascinating. I can do that from my backyard. Whenever someone asks me if I've measured the Earth, that's my go-to. Oh yeah, I measured my latitude and did it from my backyard. And you can look on any map and you can find that I'm at the 41 degree latitude on any map that has latitudes. And look, I measured it flat. I didn't use any curve calculations, and I didn't do any other stuff, but measure an elevation angle to Polaris. And then you go into the detail of what an elevation angle is and how you need a flat baseline, and that's it. That's where you plant the seed, and then you let that go and you let them ask the questions. And there's really nothing that they can ask that's not a red herring. Okay, well, what about what about the ice wall? Or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. That's what's going to be the interesting social experiment for me to watch and see how it goes. And just, watch Nathan hang out there on his own to see how it goes. I'm intrigued to how the influencers will, if whoever's the first influencer to pick you up would be the bravest one. And it'll be interesting. Have you heard back from Eddie Bravo at all?
I think he stepped away for a second.
I think that would be one of the cooler first ones.
That's what I said. I think he should be the first guy, just for the fact that he's got a large audience as far as mixed martial arts, and a lot of them guys, they're into that Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and in that region, there are a lot of flat earthers, from what I hear.
Well, his story is that he was getting it from some of his students that were telling him to look into it. So that's how he got into it. And then, but he had the clout to hang out with Joe Rogan. And he's been control-opted by Joe. He's the only guy that's been allowed to be on Joe's show. Where, from what I've seen, I haven't watched a lot of them, but I've basically seen him get kind of brushed off and made fun of the whole time, to the point where
he tried a few times to break it down. He just said he got on him. He would get on Eddie. Come on, Eddie.
Right. And what do? You're on the largest thing ever, and you're with the big influencer guy. You're only going to get to a point where you're going, yeah, okay, Joe, we're friends, whatever. Yeah. Okay, Joe. Yeah, whatever. And you give up. And that makes for a good show, and it makes for nice content that has people not know that the earth is flat. It really is. It's something that you just, I think, starting off with just, here's what level is. Here's how we measure stuff. Here's how we level things. And here's how we measure the earth and map it and chart it and navigate it, etc. Now, translate that to everything. And whenever you come up with a, globe proof or a globe thing, just point out, oh, well, see that little horizontal line there? I love it. I love it when Globers show that meme that has a guy or different guys standing on the globe, and they're all standing on tangent planes measuring angles to Polaris.
Mm.
And it's like, wait, you've got these big giants on your globe, and what are they standing? Mm-hmm. What are they standing on? Oh, well, that's the tangent. You must obviously don't know what a tangent is. I said, oh, looks like a teeter-totter to me. What do you got that on your globe for? Oh, wait, I said that there are no measurements that are ever made without using a horizontal plane of reference. Is that your horizontal plane of reference there, that little teeter-totter? Well, it's a tangent. Yeah, but it's a horizontal, right? That's how you get your angle. Well, yeah, you need that to get your angle. So, right, because you can't get an angle from a curved surface, right? So, just saying that and leaving it. And because they're not going to get any they're not going to open their eyes anymore.
See, Alpha Murphy 72 is in Discord. Alpha Murphy. Oh, he just left. He must have sensed that I was going to call on him. Because I noticed he did a little following too. He followed over to Gems. He followed over to that what was the name of the one we're on today? Official Flat Earth server. Official Flat Earth Discord. So they're the famous groupies.
Yep. I was surprised that it didn't seem too much like that server we were in today was very trolling until Nathan's groupies came. I was unfortunate that they ruined it. How many were you in there at all?
I was, but I was working with that guy, so I couldn't come off mute. And I just heard Rob Rumpison. And I heard freaking Edibear Rumpison.
How many people were in there?
I'm not sure.
A dozen or so, maybe more.
Well, that's a dozen people that probably didn't even know who you were. And once they found that girl was fascinating to talk to. I like talking to people like that, you know? And,
yeah, she was pretty cool.
Yeah. And she was cool in that, you know, she had her own mind and she was a little leery, didn't want to get blasted because she's probably been blasted before about multidimensional flat earths or whatever. But
no, you got it right. That's exactly how she phrased it.
Yeah, and you definitely did get someone in the chat thanking Nathan for being there.
Yeah, the guy that owns it, the binocular guy. He was happy about it. I think a couple of people may have heard of Nathan, but she did say this is the most exciting thing that's happened this morning. So, I don't know, man. The heavy suppression that Nathan faces and like insane. Like, how does everybody know about Big Ball Dave? What does he freaking do? How does he put himself out there? Does he contact these people and they don't mind talking to him because, like you say, he's a soft landing, he's a useful idiot? Like, would these same people even freaking look at Nathan if he decides to contact them? Or they know what he's about and say,
He promotes and networks himself very well. I mean, I followed him enough to follow his MO. I mean, he has. You were talking about teaching to kids and stuff like that.
What a shame.
Yeah, well, listen, I don't know if you know, he's got a playlist. I mean, you'll have to just, clutch your pearls and go to flatearthdave.com and look at the playlist.
I seen his playlist, his free energy shit, and everything else.
Yeah, but there's a playlist, and there's a playlist where he has gone to probably a half a dozen schools, and he has done live feeds for maybe a half a dozen schools. And each time he does a live feed, he does 3 classes. So it's like there's one guy in a science class that's the teacher, and he hooks up with Dave, whether Dave contacts him first or whatever. And he has gone in. He's done. You got to give him credit. He's done the work. He actually does live feeds for a science class or a geography class or a debate class. There's one class he did that was a debate class, high school debate class, right? And so they were going to debate flat earth. So they had Dave on, and he did 3 class periods, one after the other. He'd have a class come in, he'd get 45 minutes, he'd do the spiel, he'd answer questions, and then he'd take a break while the next class came in, and they'd start that class. 3 classes in one program, and he split it up into 3 different YouTubes. But
and what was his proof that Earth is flat?
That's not the point I'm making. I'm making that he has discussed flat Earth rationally with dozens and dozens of public school classes, and he's generally in those classes stays to the subject of flat Earth, and then of course the Feast of Nonsense for how to defend it and stuff like that. So he doesn't go into the conspiracy shit. And
no, he just stays in anti-globe shit.
Yeah. All right. Hey, I got hold on, I gotta go a second. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm not saying he doesn't do the work. He gets himself out there and gets himself on these shows. But I do believe there's a reason why they allow him on these shows. I mean, there's nothing, he doesn't plant his flag anywhere.
Or it could just be that he contacts them and asks them. It could just be that simple.
Yeah, it could be. But I think it's more nefarious than that. The reasons why you're not even known. It seems like you know about flat earthers that know what's going on. They know about you, and they say, well, this guy's been around for years. But then you have people that go, I never heard of him. How's that possible?
You're too close to it. There's many, 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 many people who don't know even anybody in this arena because they're not in the arena. They don't care. They don't.
But they know who Dave is.
You know, a few do, but he promotes himself really well, and he makes all the calls and he makes the contacts. And then once you've got a dozen, I think he's done maybe 150 podcasts, and he started off with the small ones, you know, and worked his way up. But you use your portfolio. It's like in photography. That would be my business. You know, I get better and better pictures, and I show the next person my pictures from the last job. And oh yeah, you worked for Joe? Oh yeah, I see the campaign you worked on. Okay, yeah, that was good. Okay, well you can do mine. It just grows from there. So there's a reputation that he's built up over the years that it's easy. Now he's not going to go on Rogan, but he went on with Roseanne, you know. And that was an interesting, fun conversation because, you know, Roseanne, and she's kind of plucky, and her podcast was added to by Dave there, but no different than any other person that she has on there. Talking about shit with Roseanne Barr, right? And the quality of the content creator has only grown, but that's only come from his being able to network and show the goods from previous podcasts. He won't show any of the shit that he did 2-3 years ago, you know, because that's with, you know, Beavis and Butthead. He was on some of the guys that he was on the show with was just crazy. But it literally is like, you know, going on the Beavis and Butthead podcast and talking about flat Earth. No way, that's not real. No, what about? You know, so, you know, and now, and I didn't know who Brad Lee was, but he's got, you know, million subscribers, and he's got an empire, does public speaking and does workshops, and is, all I can call him is like the alpha male guy on the internet. And, you know, doesn't matter what Dave talked about. He had Dave on, and then within 2 weeks, he had Dave on, 2 or 3 weeks maybe, he had Dave on again. And he did the interview months. It was probably, from what it looks like, he has everybody come in live to his studio. I don't know where his studio's at, maybe Texas or something. But he has everybody come into his place. It's an empire. Nice place. You know, sat down and had a man-to-man with Dave and talked shit, you know, about stuff and the moon landing and nukes and all this. And oh yeah, for flat Earth. Well, you know, it's not a globe. Here's why. Oh, interesting. Well, that moon landing definitely didn't happen, right? Yeah, I'm coming to thinking that, you know, the Earth is not a ball. So he's there, and he's asking the right questions. You just have to, and Nathan, you just have to watch the interview. Think of it as research, but just watch Bradley and his reactions and actions to the content that he's being provided, with the idea that he has to maintain whatever he thinks of as his influence or status, and keep his audience. He knows that the trolls calling up, oh yeah, you're just, you're dumb. He knows those guys are not worth his time, right? He's only going for the cream of the crop. Anyone that thinks, he'll bring them up to his level, right? Everything else is just garbage on the bottom of the lake, right? And it would be a good study to watch the interview with Dave, maybe double speed, and then click to the second interview, because I don't think he brings people on 2 times very often. So he brought Dave back to hit those squishy issues like no nuclear bombs. And I think, I'm going to just innocently just say his podcast is called Dropping Bombs. And he's got a picture of a nuclear bomb cloud on his fancy $10,000 desk that he does his podcast from, right? Has his logo is a nuclear cloud, is a mushroom cloud. Okay. Of course he's going to ask Dave, what the hell? Nuclear bombs don't exist. That's my whole fucking logo. Right? And talk about that shit. So
that's another one to add to the list, the glorious feast of nonsense.
Yeah. Right. And it's okay whether you believe in it or not, or whether it's true or not. You can think what you want. Even if you can kind of prove it in your own head. I don't think they do, but that's just me. I don't think they do. And I'm not going to fight about it. It's just gravy. Same thing with 90% of everything else that's part of the feast of nonsense. I just don't treat it like it's gospel, right? I don't treat flat earth anymore like it's gospel. Flat earth is the psyop. The way we measure the earth is the way we measure the earth. Fact. I can move on. So, I can use that information to debate with my Christian apologetics opponents and use that information to point out that they're not following scripture.
Millimeter, it be accurately measured. It's measured flat, direction up and down. Flat level we at, flight over ground. Descending from that breeze, heading in degrees. Horizontal, flat, ESC. Now you know it's flat below ground. Measured flat.